Assumption means that what you said might differ from what you actually meant. As the leader of your company, your business, no matter the industry, developing communication skills is vital. And personally, too, communication skills are vital for every human being. Kelly Featheringham joins me on this episode of Make It Click to share her insight on leadership development and communication. Welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, Christine. How are you?
I'm very good today. Now, your focus is with executives. You're an executive leadership coach and you work with high performing teams and everything. I invited you here because I believe that leadership skills are often overlooked with solopreneurs, with small business owners. And I think that your insight is so valuable for these individuals, for the solopreneurs, for the small business owners. Let's start out with I'd like to know what your thoughts are on if you look at executive leaders and small business owners and the skills. Would you say that some of those skills needed are relatively the same, but just maybe at a different level?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a very salient point about leadership being important in pretty much any role. I mean, think about it. We're leaders in our home with our family, with our significant others, our children, our pets. Leadership skills are something we tap into every day, whether you're leading a large team or a small team, or you're leading a team of one. We have to apply some of those leadership skills to ourselves to make sure that we are organized and paying attention to all of the important things that we need to be doing.
Yeah. Now, one thing I really enjoyed with our previous conversation was when you mentioned the word assumption. And I was like, oh my goodness. Don't we all assume? And I won't even go into, well, what if you assume what it really means? Look it up. Um,
Yes.
but and when we're communicating, it's not always about instructions to somebody on how so it's everything that we're doing. So let's talk a little bit about assumptions and when we're speaking to someone. As I said in my intro, like what you said might not be what you really meant. And when we're communicating, now we're talking about speaking with somebody right here because actually communicating, there's how many different methods. But when we're speaking with people and, expecting a certain result from the other person and it doesn't work out, what can you say about, I assumed you knew what I was talking about?
Yes. Yes. It's so true. I think that we don't even realize how many assumptions we make throughout the day and work at home. It's a constant thing. And I don't think that we make assumptions to be mean or unkind. I actually think it's the opposite. I think oftentimes we make assumptions to protect the other person or protect ourselves. We don't want to be seen that we don't understand or we don't know anything, and we don't want the other person to feel that we think that they don't know better or have all the information or can't figure it out. So I think they're made with good intentions, but it's such a reflex now that instead of taking the extra 2 or 3 minutes or even seconds sometimes just to confirm details to make sure everybody's on the same page, it can save so much time and frustration. Frankly, I think we all get frustrated with one another sometimes because, well, you should have known. Well, how could they know if you didn't tell them? Or how could they know if you didn't ask?
Yeah. Well, now, okay, let's talk about the communication when it comes to solopreneurs. I know with many of my clients and people that I've worked with in the past, something I hear often is when they go to outsource help. So we're looking at the communication within the business of conveying to someone something that they needed done. And this is such a huge area of discontent, shall I say?
Yeah.
What would you say are some tips to help solopreneurs convey their needs effectively?
Yeah, the first thing I would say is ask questions, lots of questions. I mean, solopreneurs, I'm by myself most of the time, and I think we look at virtual assistants, marketing, social media. There's so many areas that we rely on outside sources, but because they're experts in their fields, a lot of time we don't take the moment or two to let them know how we view things or we see things. And it may be right or wrong. We may be learning from them and asking questions about how they approach things, asking them about timelines is a very big one, making sure that you're both very clear on when you need something, making sure that they know what you're looking for. If you've got a brand package or you've got details that you want to make sure that they adhere to, talk to them about their portfolio or their resume or whatever information they're giving and have a conversation just to make sure that everybody's on the same page. And then checking in with them. Follow up is important too. I mean, not to micromanage them, but communication is very important on a continual basis to make sure that we're all tracking towards the same goal. And you can kind of adjust that based on whoever it is that you're speaking to and whatever the importance of what the information is that you're getting from them. If it's something super important to you in your business, then a little micromanaging might be important to you to make sure that this is your baby, your business you work very hard on. You want to make sure that the person that you're hiring or asking to help you with that work is taking the time to do it the way that you want it to be done and even capable. So by asking questions and sharing your requirements and your thoughts and your requests.
Mhm. I like that you said about having the conversation. Again, in this area, oftentimes, the business owner, starts working with somebody and they've never spoken to them. They send information via email or maybe post in a project management tool, but I am, surprised, dismayed when I hear that they've never had a conversation with the person. And, you know, like, and they know that in other areas, they might have sent an email to somebody and it wasn't conveyed the right way, so I'm like, "Well, why are you doing that then for the work that is so vital, for your business?" But, yeah, that conversation, yeah, and all the conveying the information out, so that's when somebody needs work done in their business. The other side of that is your customers, your clients.
Yeah.
Can you speak to us about, what client retention is huge, and when you don't communicate well, that might be a problem. How do you in your world, is client retention a big problem, and is this an area that you see business owners really need to be working on their communication there?
I think it depends, kind of on the different business models and the different industries that you're in. Some are a little bit more volatile than others. I do think that communication is a big piece of that, though, and retention is building rapport, building relationships, making sure that again, you're on the same page, being concise and clear and detailed in your communication. I see it a lot in emails. You'll talk to some folks, and everybody's got their own style. There's some folks that want to follow up to an email instantly. There's other folks that say 24 hours. There's a lot of different schools of thought on how each of us feels is the appropriate way to communicate. To your point, there's a lot of folks that with COVID and everything, so many people are online. It's almost like we've become shy to have these conversations with people and just do everything through messages and emails and online portals. But there are a lot of old school folks that really don't do well with those kinds of formats. So making
Mhm.
sure that you understand your audience and their needs, and again, having that conversation, setting up that arrangement when you first become acquainted to find out, hey, do you prefer Zoom calls? Do you prefer in person? Would you rather a phone call? What are you comfortable with? With my clients, I offer them the option of Zoom or phone calls. Most folks like Zoom. I prefer it. We did a little bit of in person prior to COVID. I'm kind of working my way back to that now, but everybody has different preferences, and being flexible with one another and being understanding about how we like to be communicated with, I think is also important, being respectful of what other people feel comfortable with.
Yeah, now So true, so true. Going back to earlier, you had mentioned about stating, the time you expect work to be done when you're having work done. It this is yeah, yeah, this all of these things that we're talking about, I've seen it. I continue to see it. People want something done, and they want it done, oh, yesterday. It's, when you're asking for work and even, shall I say, even when you've been working with somebody for a while,
Yeah.
that time frame is so key. Oftentimes, business owners forget that they're, not the only one, working with someone, and they think of something at the last minute. It's like, "Oh, can you get this done?" Yeah, talking about time frames and being very, you know, open and expressing, like, "I need this done." Let's step that back to business owners and being aware of their scheduling. So even before that communication comes in, a leadership skill is in managing their time, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely, absolutely. Time management, managing expectations, and even setting expectations and understanding, to your point, you're not the only customer, and it goes both ways, right? I mean, if as a client, I'm reaching out to somebody for a service and telling them that I need it by this date and they're not able to do it. Okay. So then when can you do it? Does that work for me? And being honest and having the conversation. And sometimes it means that you might have to find another solution or you might have to accept a different time frame. Like you said, we're not always at the top of the queue, so sometimes we have to be a little bit patient and understand that there are a limited number of hours in a day, and the way we manage our time uh, is kind of in our own bubble, so we can't necessarily control others' time and what they've got going on.
Mhm. And as when we talk about the whole leadership concept, with small business owners, with solopreneurs now, we've been talking a lot about the communication, um, but what are some of the other, without going into a huge amount of detail, what are some other hard skills that a solopreneur really should look at spending the time to develop in order to have that successful business that they were like, and I like to say, the question of you look at yourself like, would you hire you? So what
Oh, that's a great
what are some
I
other
love that. No, that's
areas?
a great question. It is, and would you hire you? That's absolutely to look inward. I mean, it starts with us, right? You've got time management, you've got organizational skills, a lot of very just general things. Follow through is a big thing. I know solopreneurs, the ones that I'm connected to, that's something that we all struggle with a little bit, and prioritization, because we always want to push the things that we don't necessarily really like to the end of the list, but
Mm,
some of us are better than others at eating the frog, right? Having that right off the list and taking care of that. While some days we just don't want to do it, and then it gets pushed to the bottom of the list. So, kind of having that self-discipline. I think that routine or some kind of a structure and strategy is really important too. And it's very individual. We There's so many books out there. Get up at 5, get up at 7, have 12-hour days, have 3-hour days. You kind of have to find what works for you, and a lot of times that's just trial and error. What didn't work this week, and reflection, and giving yourself kind of some hard lessons and looking very intently about what is going to make this more successful for me.
mm. Yeah. What works for you? Oh, thank you for saying that, Kelly, because that's something that every time I'm speaking with somebody, I'm thinking, what works for you, with the technology, with processes, what works for you? It's not what works for somebody else, it's what works for you. Well,
Yeah.
Kelly, this has been a wonderful conversation. I'd love to have you back again. If people want to know more about Kelly Featheringham, how can they do that?
So you can reach out to me on any of the social streams that we're on here. Everything's pretty much under Kelly Featheringham. I'm on LinkedIn most often. My website is www.kellyfeathering.com. If you want to learn more about assumptions and things like that, I recently wrote a book called Maximizing Team Performance by Mastering Your ABCs. You can find that on Amazon, Barnes& and Nobles, and on my website, again, kellyfeatheringham.com. It's been an absolute pleasure, Christine. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Kelly, I do have one more question for you.
Okay.
Now, you're an executive coach. You worked in the US government for many, many years, and that's where your expertise really was built up. And I believe you had said that you started your business about 7 years ago or so. When you look back upon your business, can you think of one thing that you learned, or something, a tool maybe that you use in your business that has made it click for you, for Kelly Featheringham in her business as an executive coach?
Gosh, great question. If we're talking about a functional tool, something that you use on the computer, I found
It can be a
Trello.
tool, it can be or just something you learned as a business owner, what's
Yeah, well, and I guess it's a hybrid then. I'm gonna say Trello was something I found early on. It's an online tool that's free, and it clicked with me again as we were talking about personal preferences. I really liked the format of it, and it really helped me figure out my schedule, my routine, my structure. It lets me do a lot of things in one place and kind of keep things organized. And it has a calendar function. I live by my calendar, so as long as I kind of stick to my routines and do what I have to do, then you're good. But we all have bad days where maybe we're a little bit sluggish on the details, but the most important thing that I found is you just get up the next day and attack it like it's a brand new day and just get right back on track.
Oh, wonderful advice, Kelly. Thank you so much for that.
Thank
You
you.
have a great day. Thank you so much.